This is the Katrinkles darning loom, and I'm going to show you today how you can use this kit to repair a hole in a knitted garment. It comes with an instruction pamphlet, an elastic, a heddle, a darning needle, and the loom itself. And what I'm going to mend is the hole in this sock. So you take your loom and you set it in behind the hole, and ideally you want to get one of the edges of your hole near this flat edge of the loom. So that's pretty close enough. And then you also want to double check that the whole area that you want to have mended, all the kind of threadbare sections, are within the surface of the loom too. So then you're going to add your heddle, lay it next to the flat area of the loom, like so, and then take the elastic and wrap it around the heddle and the loom and your garment like so. The heddle has grooves that will help hold the elastic in place, and then there's the extended portion of the loom that you can hold on to while you're working on this surface. Alright, then you're going to use your darning needle, thread a maybe 1 yard, maybe 1.5 yards long piece of yarn. I'm using one that's also a sock yarn, similar in weight to the project. But you don't have to. You could use something heavier, make a little thicker of a patch. So you start by putting your needle underneath the elastic back here by the heddle. Leave yourself a tail for weaving in later. And you lay your working yarn next to the first pin that you want to use. And I think I'm going to end up using almost all of the pins, probably from this first opening probably to this one here, just because there are some areas that are pretty thin all the way out to this edge. So you lay it down here, and at the bottom of the area that you want to mend, I guess, which is probably all the way down here, I'm gonna pick up a little bit of my knitting like so to anchor this end of the warp. The warps are the vertical threads that run in a weaving. This is the warp going up. Wrap around that next peg, come back down, and pick up a little bit more of my knitted fabric. Back up and around, down again. Pick up another little bit. I'm picking up maybe 2 strands of knitting down here at a time. One seems a little bit too insecure to me, so I'm going to try to pick up 2 strands each time. Back up to the top, wrap around there, and then pick up a couple of strands here. Okay, so now that you've got your area covered by the warp threads, the vertical threads, you can begin weaving. I've anchored this down here one more time, and I'm just going to begin by doing over, under, across, using my darning needle to get all the way over there. Pull that through. You want to pull it so it's taut, but not so that it's distorting your fabric on this side. So if it does this, I would try to correct that. Pull it back a little bit. There. And take a little bit of fabric on this side too to anchor the weaving on the other side. This way you're sewing your woven patch right onto the sock, and it kind of helps keep it in place. You don't have to go back around and do it again. So switch hands, try to do this lefty, under, over, all the way across. And while you're in here with your needle, if you want to just sort of slide it down to the bottom and push against the first row you did, it will sort of straighten out that whole piece of weaving. Pull that one through. You can see how it kind of wants to settle up here at first, but we'll fix that on the way back. Okay, then come back over here, get some anchor stitches. And then go back across. This one was most recently under, so I'm going to go over it this time. All the way across, slide it down and press that last row. Take a stitch to anchor this over here. And then go back again. This time this was over most recently, so now I'm going to go under. All the way across. Snug it down a little bit and then pull it through. Okay, go back. Get an anchor stitch over here. And go across. Now if you have a lot of fabric underneath your warp threads, you can kind of see here there's a patch of knitting that's there. You might once in a while decide that it's a good idea to catch some of that in your weaving. That way underneath your patch is also secure and you won't have a flap of knitting on the underside of your patch that might flop around inside of there. It's okay if it is, but it might not be comfortable, especially if it's on the bottom of a foot. Right, pull this one through. Okay, so now I've gotten closer to the heddle with my weaving. I also needed to start a new end of my mending yarn. So what I did was I anchored the first yarn over here underneath a couple of my knitting stitches, and then I also anchored the new weaving yarn under a couple of those stitches with my new end, and I weaved across one time already. So now I'm back over on this left side. I'm gonna pick up an anchor stitch in my knitting and then come back to weaving. Once in a while I catch the knitting from below and it makes a nice little pop of the knitting color up here on the surface of my weaving, which I like. Of course, if you use matching thread, it's not going to do that, but I kind of like it. Those guys tucked away. All right, and then pick one up here. And then start weaving back again. You don't have as much flexibility when you get up here at the top, so it's a little bit fiddlier. I'm going to call that the last row of weaving with the heddle on. I think I'm going to be able to take the heddle off and weave one more row after that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is put the elastic down past the heddle now and take the heddle out, and that's going to leave these loops here. And that's okay. That's my original tail. Leave that be. So now I'm going to take an anchor stitch over here as usual. And weave one more time. So it's underneath this first warp thread. Under. So, pull that one through, and then take an anchor stitch over here again, and then on the way back this time what I'm going to do is sew these loops down onto my knitting one at a time. So I have my anchor stitch. I'm going to go through this first loop, go through. Next loop is over here, so I'm going to anchor in my sock and through that loop, pull it and go across to the next one. So you're just sort of sewing down this last edge of your patch to the sock. And there aren't any more loops, but what I might do is just go over here just to make it complete that time across. Alright, so there's my patch. These are my tails from where I started in the yarn. And then you can take the elastic off and remove your loom. And there's your patch. So then what I'm going to do here is snip my tails about 6 inches, all of them, and then to sink them to the inside of my sock, I'll just thread them both on here. And tuck them in here. For now, I'm just going to pull that out so I can do this one too. This one here. And on the inside, you can just weave them in as you would normally weave in ends. So here it is, all done. Tails are tucked to the inside, and this is the whole patch. the places where I picked up a little bit of the knitted fabric underneath my weaving shows little specks of contrast color to the top, which I like. And then it is all fixed. There it is, all repaired. Thanks everybody. Happy knitting.